All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. We thank Yah so much for allowing us to be gathered together virtually on his special day, his holy day of the week, the Sabbath. We thank him so much. It's a blessing to be here. And we thank you for joining us in part 20 of Now What? Excuse me. Sorry about that. Now What? What to do after you learn the truth. This lesson has been presented or sponsored by the House of Shield Ministries. Presented by yours truly, Brother Andrew Bradley. This is part 20 of a very long lesson that speaks on the truth behind before you do what you need to do next, the now what. So we're still focusing on the truth. And I think just in the fact that we're in part 20, it tells you how much there is to know. So we'll go ahead and continue on what we've been talking about on the next slide. We've been talking about Israel is eternal, okay? And we've been focusing on the scriptures that say that because the church says that Israel was left alone because they refused the Messiah. And Yah went to some other people, the nations of the world, or the Gentiles as they call them. Or Yah has created a spiritual Israel now. That anybody that believes in the Messiah is Israel, which is ridiculous too. And that comes from the misunderstanding of Paul's writings. But if you read the prophecies and what's to come when it comes to the end times, they're all associated with Israel. And it speaks of Israel as a people. So let's continue, not a spiritual, not a replacement, but a people. And let's continue with this thought just so we can prove the importance of knowing the Old Testament or original scriptures. And we're going to continue in that and read Jeremiah 31, 35 through 37. Thus saith YAHUAH, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. YAHUAH of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from me, from before me, saith YAHUAH, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith YAHUAH, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundation of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith YAHUAH. Now, he said a nation before, meaning in his presence forever. That's what they are. Mm-hmm. And he says the only way you're going to sit here and say that he should do this, cast them away, is if the sun, moon, and stars have departed. We haven't seen that. I think I saw the sun this morning. And there's not a person in this world who can measure the heavens. None. Nor do they understand fully the foundation of the earth. They don't. So Israel, the true seed, not the spiritual seed, is eternal. Just by the way Jeremiah writes here. That's why it's important for the church to have its dogma to separate the understanding of the old and say, oh, the old is only for the Hebrew, or the old doesn't really apply anymore. Mm-hmm. Because the old will catch them up in some of the lies that the church teaches. Mm-hmm. That's really what that is. Mm-hmm. Anybody want to add to that one?
We're good.
All right. Well, let's move to the next slide and go into Joel, which I just love this book. Let's have a reader. I'd like to start with Minister White. So you mind reading this for me, please?
Sure. Joel chapter 3, verses 1 through 2. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people, and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land.
He said, my heritage. Mm-hmm. My heritage. So if it's his, why would it be replaced? I don't understand how you can replace something that is inherently his. By his right, it's his. It would be like someone coming out of nowhere and said that the inheritance that is mine no longer belongs to me. Just out of nowhere. How do you do that? That doesn't make sense. The nations here is not Gentile like you see it translated most of the time. They translated it correctly as nations because Yahushua is going to judge all the nations in this valley. That valley is actually Yahushaphat, and it means Yahushua has judged. But the point is, he's judging the world, the other nation, on behalf of his people. So how is Israel done away with or replaced? Because if there's a spiritual Israel, all right, let's say if there's a spiritual Israel, what has the spiritual Israel suffered in order for Yah to judge the nation? That's one. And if the spiritual Israel is Israel now, then what happened? Where did they come out of? The very nation that he's supposed to judge. So what they're really trying to do is dodge judgment. If you think of it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'd like to speak to that. First of all, if he says that the people belong to him, Israel belongs to him, then as you said, how can they replace what belongs to him? So the answer to that is that they cannot. So only he can replace the people that he called his own. So
that's right.
Is it written anywhere in the word that he has replaced his own children? It's not. The only thing you will find written is that I'm going to come and get you and gather you back from the east to the west and the four corners of the earth and bring you back under my wings. That's all you can ever find in there. You cannot find where he has actually replaced his own children. And two, he said that the land belongs to him. So if the land belongs to him, then he's also the only one that can give the land away. And right now, there are people on that land that he is not giving it to, which makes him a thief. So because you are a thief and you have stolen from YAHUAH, then justice shall come upon you.
Yep. I don't care what. There's so much evil associated with the people that are in that land. They have a big price to pay as well. They have a huge price to pay. Anybody else?
I'd like to add to what Minister Ronnie just said. The price to pay is fire. The world was wiped the first time with water, but this time it shall be by fire. Just as it was done when Joshua went to Ai and Achan stole something that he should not have, that didn't belong to him. He stole something from the Most High, and the judgment for that was stoned and to be burned, right? So those who have stolen the land which belong to the Most High have stolen the people whom belong to the Most High, the judgment will be fire. The same penalty.
Yep, and he says that. And I think fire is, because one thing fire does, it destroys and breaks things down to the molecular level. Water will destroy, but things will remain. Certain pieces and a remnant. Not with fire. Fire is absolute. It's thorough. It's molecular. It breaks things down to the molecular level. The world needs a good cleaning. It's going to need a really good cleaning. All right. Anybody else?
I think we're good.
All right. Let's move to the next slide here. All right, Minister Ronnie, you mind reading both of those for me, please?
I'm going to let Minister White or someone else read that right now.
Okay. Go ahead, sis, brother. You say Joel 3, verse 68. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold into the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughter into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabeans, to the hand of the children of Sabine, to a people far off, for YAHUAH hath spoken. That the heathen be wakened and come up into the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I was sent to judge all the heathen round about. Thanks, brother. In the first set of verses, what I like to point out is that he said he will give the sons and daughters into the hands of Judah. He didn't say Ephraim, Nathaniel, Dan, Gad. He didn't say those. He said Judah. Minister White, why do you think he said Judah?
The tribe, the tribe of YAHUAH is where our Messiah comes from, right? So since the Messiah comes from that tribe, the King of Kings, he will decide their fate. It's the ruler, it's the kingly tribe, it's the tribe that rules. All tribes participate. I'm not saying that all tribes do not participate, but Yahushua came through the tribe of Judah. So the decisions or the fate of those people is determined through them, through YAHUAH, through that tribe. That's my thought on that.
Yep. Yes, ma'am. I agree with you. And another thing I was thinking of too, it says that Judah was the one that was scattered to the four corners. And if you think about that, we were most likely the ones that were sold on those ships in Deuteronomy 28. All the tribes. So there was a mixture of those tribes in there, but Judah was the one that was really scattered. So it's almost like God saying, I'm going to give you to the ones that y'all scattered the most. And let them decide on how you should be addressed or handled. To the point of Joel 3 and 12, to show the wordplay, we already know that nations would come, it already said, and be judged, because you sold my people into the Grecians and so on. But then it jumps down to 12 and it says, let the heathen be awake and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For now, he's going to judge the heathen. And heathen, if you look up the basic definition, means an unbeliever, non-believer, pagan group. But the word is goy, which means either nations, which the word really is translated to nations, but it's commonly translated to Gentile, which is a mistranslation, but it's commonly done. It's chosen to be heathen to misdirect. It was all those who had their hands against Israel, the 12 tribes. Gentile, non-believer, anybody. So by using the word heathen, they're trying to say that it's the non-believers who are going to suffer this judgment. Not the Gentiles who believe. That's not true. If your people are of the people who put their hands on Israel, you have a problem. You have a serious problem coming. And the only way you can avoid it is by understanding what Isaiah says when he talks of the stranger. If you don't do that, you're in trouble. I don't really care how much you think about us. Now, you might think about us quite different than what your ancestors did. Doesn't matter. Y'all don't play when it comes to wrongs. He does it right and wrong the same way. When he blesses you, your children, everybody else in your household. But when sin is dealt with, it's visited upon your children, and your children's children. You don't play. So you can't run from this.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I wanted to ask
I
you.
was just going to say that heathen is just a misuse to misdirect the audience. That's all. Go right ahead.
Well, that was going to be my question. The word heathen. Is it? Can you say that word heathen can apply to some of those who were in Christianity at that time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Because really that word should be Gentile or nations. If you translate the word literally, it would be nations, and you would have specified which nations by your context. The word heathens only applies by the English translator. And it's applied conveniently to show you that it's only those who don't believe that will be judged. But that's not what Yah is saying. It's those who touched his people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be a believer, a Christian. You can be a non-believer, a heathen. It doesn't matter. That's why the word nations should be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All the nations round about. I don't give a care if you're Christian or not. But we can have that. We've already talked about that in the lesson where we know that Christianity does not come from Scripture. And you can't find the religion in the Bible. You'll find the word Christian. But we also told you where that word came from. So please make sure you take a look at all the sections that we have them titled where you can quickly go to and listen and possibly find the topic of interest you want. But we explain the word Christian quite thoroughly as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I think we're good.
All right. Let's go to the next one. All right. Sister Billy, can you read for me, please?
Yes, I can. Job 3:16-17. YAHUAH also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. And the heavens and the earth shall shake. But YAHUAH will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So shall ye know that I am YAHUAH, your Elohim, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no strangers pass through her anymore.
This is real specific. This is really specific. And this is not, this hasn't happened yet. We must understand, the audience must understand. This is a prophecy. And it hasn't happened yet. But if you look at the way the world is going and how Israel is waking up all over the world, this is not too far off. And he says here, and the strength of my children, Israel. There's no substituting that. Right? There's no substitution for that. So we have to understand that these are specific prophecies to Israel. How can Israel be done away with when these are so specific? I don't understand the church's teachings, how Israel's been replaced because they rejected the Messiah. If Israel's rejected the Messiah, then who was Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, all the disciples? Every one of them were Hebrew. I thought the Hebrews rejected him. No, many did, just like they do now, don't even know. So we have to think logically here. How did Israel reject the Messiah when many of Israel followed him, many of Israel believed in him, and the followers, the disciples, were of Israel? All the text written in the New Testament was by Israel. So it doesn't make sense. Anybody want to add to that? Do people see and understand that Joel is still talking about Israel?
I would like to highlight the latter part of verse 17, if you don't mind, where it says,
Yes,
and there shall no strangers pass through her anymore.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't that something? Because right now, there are a lot of different nationalities, we'll say it that way, in Jerusalem at this point. But YAHUAH is saying, when he does what he wants to do, the stranger will not be in Jerusalem. That means if you do not belong to the Most High, if you do not belong to Israel, you won't be in Jerusalem. You won't be in Jerusalem. You may be in some other parts of the land of Canaan, but you will not be in Jerusalem. It says no strangers will pass through her anymore. And I was curious about that. So I decided to look up the word pass through. And it says it's a Hebrew Strong's number 5674. H5674. And it says it means to cross over. To cross over or to transition. Right? So Yah is saying that this land has been set aside for Israel and no one else. That's my point. And thank you, Brother Andrew.
No, that's a good ad. That's a very good ad. Thank you. And that's true. Now, let's look at the next slide if nobody has anything else. All right.
I had something to say.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
And I was referring to the verse that says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We beheld His glory." So the rejection of the Messiah. If the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and hold on for a second, please. Okay, and if the Word became flesh and we accepted Him, and the church said they accepted Him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you accepted Him and He is the Word, which means He's the Torah that became flesh, then how can you reject the Torah and accept Him?
Mm.
When you think like this, you realize it doesn't make sense how you stayed in the church so long. It just what they teach makes no sense to me anymore.
Mm.
I'm baffled by it. I guess it was the fear. Y'all know the fear kept me in church for some time, but now thinking back, looking at all the problems and contradictions and the calisthenics that they do to try to make this stuff look right. And some people you cannot teach the truth to them no matter what you do. So it's just, I don't know. Minister Rodney, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Sister Lily, can you read this next one for me, please?
Yes. So 3:18-20. And it shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and a fountain shall come forth of the house of YAHUAH, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall be desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness, for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation.
Thank you, sister. This is woo. All right. If you don't think Yah loves Judah, has He not made this clear? Now, if this is not this has to be after the kingdom is brought down, the kingdom that the Messiah speaks of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to be dwelling in Judah and in Jerusalem, and no stranger can come in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means no one can be in that kingdom, but who?
Israel.
This is speaking of the end time kingdom. This is speaking of the end time kingdom. Not only speaking of the end time kingdom, but this is the smackdown on the greatest enemies of Israel, Egypt and Edom.
Mm-hmm.
Edom is a whole lot of the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot for everything. Edom took roots and just flew. They were like a dandelion stuck in the wind, a big dandelion. They got blown all over the world and planted their seeds. So you have Edom in Australia, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, Canada, Alaska, all over Europe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of them. And they have to pay a price for all that they did to Judah and Israel as a whole. But Judah had the smackdown put on them and was really scattered throughout the world by the hands of Edom.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to see here in Joel that it's not the other nations at all that YAHUAH gathers. It's not the other nations who replace Judah at all. It's Judah as well as Israel forever. It's him. It's those two that he plans to have them dwelling in Jerusalem from generation to generation forever. He didn't say a spiritual at all. So why is it that all of a sudden a man's letter makes you think that there's a spiritual Israel? This one man speaks beyond the prophecy of YAHUAH himself. Then that should tell us one thing at least. Somebody's not understanding something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all there is to it. There's more to Paul's his letters than what we've been taught, of course. So somebody's mistaught us. Because if you're thinking that there's a spiritual Israel, then you're ignoring the prophecies that God has given to his prophets about Israel. We can't do that. We have to read the scriptures as a whole and understand that our Messiah and the disciples and Paul all had only the original scriptures to live by. There was nothing else. And the church doesn't teach that. The church will let you believe that the New Testament was present when the Messiah was alive. And that it has just as much weight as the original scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
That makes no sense. Now, with this eye that God has given me, it doesn't make sense. That can't be the case. All right, I hope this was clear. Anybody want to add to this one?
We're good.
All right. Okay, let's move to the next slide. All right, we're back. Oh, this is a repeat. I'm sorry. I actually had this already in previous slides. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
But at least I'm referencing since we know that Jeremiah 31 speaks of the new covenant, right? Paul, who is really the author of Hebrews, speaks of that in chapter 8, verse 8 here. For finding fault with them, he saith, behold, the day comes, saith YAHUAH, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. If Israel is going to be a nation before YAHUAH forever via the renewed covenant, which is spoken of in Jeremiah 31 and 31, and it is spoken of in the New Testament as well, then there is no other people who can replace them. This literally speaks of the new covenant the church keeps talking about. But we know if we look at the Hebraic word for new and compare it to the Greek word, they should not differ in understanding because Paul is not quoting some type of Greek text anyway. He's quoting the Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
So in Greek, it's kanos or kanos, which is freshness or new. Some people will say new as well. But in the Hebrew, it's kadash. And in pictorial Hebrew, it means something that is renewed, restored, or repaired, or the Paleo Hebrew or the original Hebrew text.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find that same definition in the root word for new, which is, it's spelled the same, pronounced the same, but because of the Masoretic text, it has a slightly different pronunciation that I do not show here. And thus it's a different word. But it's still kadash, which means to rebuild, renew, and repair.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no brand new covenant because this covenant requires the same thing as the original covenant in the first place, the very first one. Obedience to his laws, statutes, and commandments. He's renewing it because he plans to make sure that it's written on our hearts and minds not on paper or stone tablet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have to read it every day. I mean, we still have to teach it, of course, but teach, read, study, do all the things we do now. But this stuff will be placed in our hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Anybody want to add to this?
One small comment. In verse 8, it says, I will make a new covenant. Who is he making it with? Did it say, I'm making a new covenant with Christianity or with Islam or with any other people? He makes it clear in here in verse 8 that this covenant is with the house of Israel and with YAHUAH only. This is a statement of exclusivity. Isn't that right? Other people, nations are excluded from this conversation. The covenant is renewed with the house of Israel and the house of YAHUAH. So I just wanted to highlight that piece.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you.
I think this reminds me of a husband and a wife that separate from each other for a while, for a long time, and then they decide they're going to reunite, and they get together and renew their vows.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what this reminds me of with Israel and YAHUAH, is that there's been a separation for a while, and then now the vows are being renewed, but the bride in herself is not being replaced.
Excellent analogy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very good. And that's very true. I was telling my children this morning that YAHUAH considers Israel, the 12 tribes, his bride. And that's very important. It tells you because that demonstrates the love he has, the intimacy that he has towards the people he has chosen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move to the next slide and keep this going. We're going to keep talking about, we've shown so much, but we're going to keep going because it just shows you the value of how much Israel is spoken of. Minister White, you mind reading this, please?
Sure. Psalms 89, verses 28 through 33. My mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my Torah and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgression with a rod and their iniquity with stripes. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail.
Oh, this is a good one. So think about that. He says that David's seed will pretty much be talking about the seed of David or the seed of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so on. But we know that this is during the time of David, most likely. And he's saying that his throne, as the days of heaven, right, shall endure. But if his children sin, he will put that transgression on their children and their children. I mean, you will see it. And only a certain group of people can demonstrate this because Deuteronomy 28 shows you what happens to these people when they do forsake the covenant, break his statutes, and does not keep his commandments. You see it in Deuteronomy 28. Only one group of people line up with Deuteronomy 28, and it is not the Ashkenaz or the wannabe Sephardic Jews. I'm sorry. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
They are some of the most wealthiest people in the world. They don't even fall under the curses. And be honest with you, they're some of the most disobedient people in the world if they were saying that they were truly a Torah.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, his loving kindness will not only be taken from us. And we see that now because he's starting to wake us up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's forever. It's forever. Anybody want to add to this?
I want to highlight just a piece of that where it says, visit their transgressions with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. So YAHUAH is saying to us that he will handle their transgressions with the rod of correction, right? And spank them with stripes if they continue to be steadfast and stiff-necked. So they don't go unpunished or unchastened. But he doesn't turn his back on them. He said, I will continue to love them and be faithful to them. So I just wanted to highlight that it's through correction and stripes that YAHUAH handles the seed forever. Not rejection, but correction and stripes. Thank you, Brother Andrew. Mm-hmm.
This is an image of Yah that the church doesn't teach. Oh, he's love, he's sweet, he's kind, he's merciful. I'm not saying he's not none of those, but cross him the wrong way and see how he gonna act just like my daddy did now.
Mm-hmm.
He gonna have you nervous. He gonna have you scared. He gonna have you second guessing your decisions. That's the type of Yah we have, because that's love. That's true love for his children. He chastised those who love. He loves. Mm-hmm. But the way the church teaches him, he's love and love. What did they say? They say YAHUAH is love, and love is all you need, because love is the two commandments that you only have to obey now. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the only two. So if you have love, you're good. That's why having the scriptures in the hands of the heathen have been absolutely devastating to our understanding.
And also to speak of the people that are pretending to be the children of YAHUAH, they have not, as you said, they have not suffered. They have the riches and the comforts that YAHUAH children did have and will have again, but they have not endured the suffering that he placed upon us for disobedience. So it's not balanced. There's an imbalance when I look at those people. And the Father is a Father of balance. He always balances the scales. And so how can you have the riches if you didn't endure the punishment to get it? And also here it just says that he visits the transgressions with the rod and the iniquity with stripes. Well, he tried to show you an example of that with the Messiah. If you know, a lot of people that were in slavery were beaten with a whip. And you can look at the pictures now, and you will see that a lot of our ancestors' backs were whipped and they're striped. They're striped with the wounds of whips. And Yahushua was striped with the wounds of the whip that they used. So if you take a look sometimes in the physical, you can see where he was marking himself to look like the people that were his inheritance with the physical mark, the mark of a stripe. Because when you were beat with the whip or a belt, you were striped. You yourself become striped because the whips are on you.
And you don't see that. You don't see that with the current people.
No.
If they were truly beaten and whipped, you would see that condition in them. And you don't see that. You see it in our people, but you don't see it in them. Secondly, they are so quick. No, you don't. And they're so quick to point out the Holocaust. But like Minister White said, that was a wartime act. That's one. Two, it lasted, let's say, 6 or 7 years. And I'm sorry, the numbers of deaths that they say happened was impossible, even though a lot died. Tens of thousands died. I'm not arguing that. It was horrible. It was a travesty. One of the worst things humans could do to others. There's no argument there. But it doesn't hold a finger to the slave trade. Absolutely does not hold a finger to the global impact that slavery had on our people. It's a blip in time compared to that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And the Holocaust just did not have that many people available to do it. What do those numbers? It doesn't add up. But the suffering was great. But it was based upon the war. Yes, brother.
If you look at it, even with the Holocaust, the Ashkenazi Jews do not line up with Deuteronomy 28. They never have and never will. They weren't scattered. They weren't sold. They didn't go from the head to the tail. They didn't do any of that. They've been a pinnacle society of finance behind the scenes, influencing. They've never went from the head. They stayed the head the whole time. Even back in World War II, there were Jews that were so rich that they weren't touched. That they were moved around, that they were able to get out of that place. Why do you think when it came to the World War II, that some of the Germans were already over the United States, had to go back to Germany, put on a uniform, and fight against the United States? Some of the Jews were already over here that were millionaires at the time. They do not line up with Deuteronomy 28, and they never have, never will. They are not the people. The Holocaust does not match. Like you said, it was a tragedy. It was horrible. It was inhumane. It was just tragedy. It was horrible. It was devastating. But it's not right up to 28, and it cannot hold a finger to the slave trade, to the kingdom of Judah that was raped, pillaged, demoralized.
I'll ask you on this. They took a train packed like sardines to some of the camps, but none of them were kidnapped, raped, murdered, starved, thrown off the boats, laid in their own feces, and urine for months in the belly of a beast, right, of a ship. And then when you get to the lands, you work till you died. And they did it for 200 and something years directly when it comes to the slave trade. So it's just, they don't line up. They don't line up. Anybody else?
Just want to mention that the Holocaust that the Jewish ones talk about, they paint that picture as though that time of war was dedicated to them, that no other people or peoples or nations were involved in that travesty.
That's not true.
Yeah, and it's not true. They were not the only one that suffered the violence. Other nationalities, other people suffered that violence too. It was not exclusive to them, but they paint it as though it is. But when it comes to the slave trade, that was exclusive to us, to the tribes of Israel. That slave trade that was taking place, that triangular slave trade, that was exclusive to Israel. They weren't going over to China and capturing them and shipping them all over the world. They weren't doing that. You didn't see them over in Italy, catching them and shipping them all over the world. So what happened to our people? It is exclusive to us. And when we say that there is a great Holocaust, that museum should be erected with our people and not theirs, because what happened to us is the greatest Holocaust in the world, bar none. Bar none.
Yeah, bar none. And they do try to use the Holocaust as an example that it lines up with 28, but it does not, because Brother Dargis is right. Many of the Jews, many of the Jewish people dodged that situation and quickly came into very prominent positions in the world after World War II, quickly becoming some of the wealthiest people in the world. Secondly, many Russians, Polish, and Americans were in those camps as well in different parts, especially the Americans in the Pacific, where the Japanese camps were at. But in those other camps, the Jewish, were to say they're supposed to be Jewish camps, they were not. They had Russians and Polish soldiers in those camps as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't exclusive. All right, let's move to the next slide. And brother, you mind reading this one for me?
Yes, sir. That'll be Psalms 89, 34 to 37. My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that is gone out of my lips. Once I have sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto Yah. David, I'm sorry about that. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon, and as a faithful witness unto Shamayim, Selah.
Can you make that any clearer? That tells you, one, YAHUAH loved David and kept his covenant. He doesn't break his covenant. He spoke his covenant with his people and with David. He doesn't break them. They don't change. The church says things have changed. How?
Show me.
You're making him a liar.
Mm-hmm.
And this agrees with what we've already talked about earlier with Jeremiah 31, 35, and 37. How can Israel be replaced when David's throne is eternal? If David's throne is eternal, and Yahusha is the prince, captain, king over his people, Israel, in the renewed covenant, how can the church replace Israel? How is that possible? You're calling Yah a liar. That's why the Christian church is a place we don't belong.
So true.
So true.
Stuff gets you very upset when you think about the truth. It upsets you. And then, just to show you how messed up Christian church is, the scriptures can be translated two ways, right or wrong. There's no middle ground. I just hope you get it right. But if you look at Christianity, they'll tell you there's about 1,000 ways because there's like 1,000 denominations.
Mm-hmm.
That alone doesn't make sense. And when you go into communities where the churches are, especially in the most needed ones, the conditions of the communities are the same. That don't make sense either. So the church is a place that those who have the truth must get out of. Anybody want to add to this?
I want to ask a question.
I'd like to speak.
Oh, go ahead, please, Ms. Ronnie.
Are you sure? Okay. Okay, so I want to speak to the word endure. To the word endure. His seed shall endure forever. So I wanted to speak to that. I looked at the definition of the word endure. And I was surprised to see that it meant YAHUAH, which is breath. So the word endure means breath. So then I looked up under the AHLB, and it says to exist or have breath. That which exists has breath. In Hebrew, thought the breath is the character of someone or something. So he's saying that we will exist forever with his character inside of it because we are his chosen seed. And his breath will give us the life eternal. But it's not just his breath, but it's his character. So this is why you know that your character has to match his character in order for you to have life eternal, to get into the kingdom, which means that there is a law you must follow in order to have that character. Because he sets the law. He is the law. So how can you get into the kingdom without it?
Your statement literally demonstrates the lack of understanding the church has. They don't understand scripture. They can't put two and two together. They can only understand things separately. And they purposely keep them separate so they can include those who were never intended to be included. That's what happens when you take something that doesn't belong to you.
Exactly.
Anybody else?
I was looking at the statement, the scripture, the first line where it says, "My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips." I was asking myself the question, what does that look like in a court of law? Because a covenant is a legal document. It's a legal document. So he says, I won't alter the thing that's gone out of my lips. So if someone alters his statement, isn't that like tampering with a witness's testimony? What's the penalty for that? What's the penalty for altering the testimony of a witness? You hear the way I'm asking the question?
Isn't it called perjury? Isn't that perjury or something?
Yeah. I'm thinking.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Please.
Well, man's law, if you alter the written or oral testament of a witness, that is intimidation, coercion, and that is falsifying a state or federal document.
Mm-hmm.
Now, dealing with the Most High, that's even worse. That's theft. That's deceitfulness, and you're entering, like I said, through the back as a thief in the night. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight that what is being said in this scripture, this is a legal statement that's being made, and I want to be sure that people catch that. He's saying, I cannot alter what has gone out of my mouth. There is a testimony that has been made. And this covenant is a witness. So you cannot alter the testimony of the witness. You can't tamper with what the witness has said. You cannot do it in a legal courtroom in man's court, and you surely cannot do it in Yah's court either. So it's not possible. It's impossible for there to be another Israel, because what has gone out of his mouth cannot be amended, changed, redacted, whatever word you want to use. So I just wanted to highlight that
It's really important.
Yeah.
It's really important to understand that. You're talking about, Malachi says in Malachi, I change not.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't, if it's gone out of his mouth, it's a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a done deal. He's not going to change it. He can't, because then it makes room for him to be called a liar or a wishy-washy Elohim, someone that possibly can't be committed on. He's not going to risk that. That's why you don't hear his voice often, because he knows once it speaks, it's a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for us to read these scriptures in its entirety, so we can understand the personality and character of Yah. What we've been talking about really is a long memory father who does not change his mind and doesn't have to repeat what's already been said. It is done. There's no new revelation. Many Christian pastors will say that. Well, if that's the case, then where does the spiritual Israel come from? Oh, well, that's included in your statement somehow, even though those books weren't formed, and that Bible, that part of the Bible wasn't formed until 400 years after his death.
Mm-hmm.
These are the problems the church has. And because the church doesn't want us to understand the scriptures as a whole or their own history, they drop the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I think we're good.
No.
All right. We're going to end part 20 here. I believe this is a good stopping point, because now we're going to start moving into the New Testament to show you that Israel is eternal by us showing Paul's letters were never written for example, Acts is Luke. Was most likely the author was Luke. And we'll talk about Acts a little bit, but we'll get into the author, Paul's letters like Galatians, to talk on that so you can understand that even what you read in the New Testament was never for somebody else. It was still Israel. Why would Paul change when Paul knew exactly what we just read? Do you not know Paul was a master of what we just read? He knew all of that stuff. So for him to say in his letters that Israel's spiritual or Israel's anybody who believes in the Messiah, he will be calling YAHUAH a liar, to be specific.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Paul was not that. Paul was not that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? All right. Well, we'll end it here. So we'll end it here. We thank the audience for hanging in there with us as we go through these scriptures. I think they're very important because it lets you understand the nature of our Most High Yah when it comes to addressing His people and how he pretty much guaranteed that relationship for all eternity. So please join the House of Shiloh as we continue in the lesson, part 21, still speaking towards the eternal existence of Israel. And now we're going to move into the New Testament side to show you even in the letters of Paul, which is used by the church to debunk much what we say the church is eternal. So we thank you all for joining us. And please, we're looking forward to you next week. Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
And I'd like to remind you also that we have the previous teachings, all of them, part 1 through part 19, are on the ministry's website. So if you'd like to go back and start from the beginning and work your way forward, all of them are listed there for your edification. And with that, we say Shabbat Shalom to those who are present online and those who will watch our videos in the very near future. Shalom.